There we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Foldspace Origami Studio. And I'm your host, James Peak. I've got a new microphone situation going on here, so hopefully you all can hear me okay and it sounds all right. If you can hear my voice, clap once. Just kidding. Well, you can clap if you'd like. But I just want to, again, welcome you all back to yet another live stream here at Foldspace. It's been a little while. Honestly, I had hoped to do a bit more live streaming this summer, but it's been busy. And as many of you know, I have some pretty big plans on my plate. If you received my email or saw my posts online recently, I am getting ready to move to another state. And I'm very excited about this, moving to Louisville, Kentucky, which is my hometown. And I'm just about to pack up my studio and head down there. In fact, I've only got about, 2 weeks left in this space in its current form. However, I will still be in this room until the end of September. Of course, I'll be here for the Autumn Retreat, which we're going to talk all about here pretty soon. But I will be renting a U-Haul truck here in a few weeks, and I'm going to pack up as much of my studio as I can, drive it down to Louisville, Kentucky. And I've got a new studio space already picked out, and I've already signed the lease and everything, and I cannot wait to share more about that. But that's for later. Today we are here to fold an excellent alligator model that was designed by my good buddy, Julie Juniper. And Julie, of course, is going to be a special guest at my upcoming Autumn Retreat, my Autumn Online Retreat happening September 27th through 29th. We've got 4 special guests, much like the previous retreat that I held back in March. So we've got 6 classes spread out over 3 days, and I'm going to teach 8 models total, and Julie is just one of the 4 guests. I've also got Jason Schneider, I've got William Hartman, and Sai Chen all lined up as special guests. I'm really excited about all of these models, and most of these models came from this summer, in a sense, where I attended the Origami USA convention in New York City a few months ago. I know some of you here in the stream were there as well, but a lot of the models that I'm teaching at the retreat are models that I learned at OUSA in New York City, and it was great because I got to take the classes with those designers. And so the retreat models are very much sort of the highlights for my convention experience. I'm very excited about this lineup of models. These are all really great designers. And so, in preparation for this online retreat, I thought it would be cool to do some live streams that pertain to the main event, so to speak. And just real quick, while we're speaking of live streams, so of course today we're folding Julie's alligator. Next week we're going to fold Jason Schneider's box turtle, such a cute and clever model. Another highlight, as I mentioned before. And then the following week, I'm going to teach how to fold this square twist tessellation. Now, the reason why I want to teach this is that model is used to form a pattern on the back of the toad. You'll see in the little slide there. And in fact, here, I'm going to show you one here in just a second. In fact, why don't I pull that up right now? So here's an example of one of William's toads that I folded, and you can see it's got this really cool pattern on the back. So, I learned this toad, I learned the pattern, and I thought, that'd be cool if I made a whole square worth of these little square twists. And so I did. So I made one of these, and then I made another one. And I thought, this would be a cool class to teach in preparation for the retreat, so that it gives people a chance to sort of practice the square twists before you get around to actually making the toad. So really thrilled to be back, teaching and to present these particular models. I also want to give a big thanks to all the artists who were participating in this event. I also want to give a huge shout out to Julie Juniper, who is here in the chat. Everyone say hi, Julie. And I also want to just give a quick shout out to the other people who've chimed in the chat. A lot of my old buddies, my origami pals, Talo, Brent, Julie, Trisha, Joanne, Bonnie, Steve, thank you so much for joining. All right, so let me think here. Did I make all of my announcements that I wanted to make? Yeah, pretty much. We'll get to the folding. I'm sure there'll be other stuff that I'll think of. So let's see here. For our alligator, well, first off, I want to point out, you might have noticed there's a little graphic here in the corner. If you attended my online convention back in 2020, or even a few of my videos and maybe at least one or two live streams from way back when, I used diagram images in the corner. So we're trying to bring that back for this event. And so I've had the privilege and the honor of helping Julie with kind of testing her diagrams and helping with revisions on that. And she's been so kind as to put together this slideshow of the diagram steps. So it's pretty awesome. It's something that I always love to incorporate whenever possible. Now let's talk about paper selection. So ideally, having a sheet of paper that is the same color on both sides is probably preferable, and I'll show you why. So if you can use regular kami, and regular kami works just fine, but the nature of the design means that, here, I'll show you this one. This is a little bit bigger. That you do end up with a white stripe running down the back, and you see a little bit of the white in the seams here as well. Now, it's not the end of the world, so big deal. But if you would rather not have that white stripe, then go ahead and use a piece of paper that does not have a white side, that is the same color on both sides. So yeah, Talo just mentioned in the chat that Talo says that he heard that Julie rocked her Gator class from one of her students. And yes, indeed, Julie taught this at OUSA, and it was a phenomenal class. She did such a great job. And one thing that I think Julie did really well in particular was that she explained a bit of her design process, or she even talked a bit about grafting, which is something we're going to talk about today as well. But she talked about how grafting works in an origami design and how it kind of pertained to this particular model. Okay, so let me think here. Oh yeah, so the other thing I was going to mention too, as far as ratios go, so this gator that I have in my hand was folded from a 6-inch or 15 centimeter square of kami. And so just for a comparison, you can see that the length of your alligator will be not that much shorter than like one edge of your square. So yeah, just to give you an idea. Now for the class, I'm going to use this bigger sheet of paper just so that you all can see it pretty well, or see it better. And let me think, is there anything else that I should mention? I don't think so. And feel free to chime in here in the chat, especially you, Julie, if there's something that I'm missing or something that you think I should point out. But I'll do my best. And thank you again for letting me teach this. All right, so now I am using a regular piece of kami. So if you are also using a sheet that has a white side or a color that you don't care to see, start with that side facing up, okay? And our first step is to fold in half along one of the diagonals. And the reason being is that we are about to make a kite base. This is not a very square piece of paper, it seems. That, or I'm just not folding very accurately. Either could be the case. Okay. All right, of course we've got the double arrow there, so that means we're going to unfold And now we're going to form a kite base. So to form the kite base, we're going to take one of these edges one at a time. We're going to bring this edge up to the center crease line. And if you've taken classes with me before, you know that I like to kind of ease my way in on this corner here with the angle bisector. If you get it lined up really well way up here, everything will kind of work itself out down here. But I like to kind of ease in, just kind of like gently run my hand across the paper, and that will help that crease kind of fall right into place. And I'll make the same fold with this edge to complete the kite base. Okay, so this is the first base we're going to be talking about here today. And it kind of makes sense that this alligator would come from a kite base. I mean, this corner of the paper will eventually become the tail of the alligator. Okay, so let's go ahead and open that up as the arrows indicate. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to create a grafted fish base. So in a way, we're kind of making two fish bases out of the same piece of paper, but they're going to be very different proportions from one another. Okay. So to do that, we're going to make some additional folds that will eventually form what is kind of like a preliminary collapse. Okay. So we have these handy reference points. Here, I got my pointer out today. So if you follow your kite crease to this edge here, and then here, those are handy reference points. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to spin the paper around so that it's going to be opposite of what you see here. Okay. But so first I'm going to make this crease by taking this corner of the paper and I'm going to bring it up to meet that crease line at the edge. And so there's that fold. Now I'm going to take us on a very slight tangent here that I just have to share this with you because I just learned this today. Okay. So by making the folds that we just made, we made the kite fold, and then we made a fold with this corner to the end of the kite crease. Let me just show you something real quick. You don't have to flip over your paper, but you see this rectangle right here? This rectangle is an A ratio rectangle, as in A4 paper, which is it's like what people use for printer paper all over the world in practically every country except the United States and Canada. Because, anyway, we don't have to get into why, but it's because we don't use the metric system. That's really the main reason why. But anyway, but that's an A proportioned rectangle. And I don't want to go too far off on this tangent, but I thought that was really cool. And I want to give a shout out to Brendan Plum on Instagram. His handle on Instagram is Foldy McFoldface. And Foldy McFoldface, we've talked about Brendan before, in fact, when we folded Dasha's models at the last online retreat. But anyhow, I couldn't believe it. And in fact, I did the measuring. And so, so real quick, the proportions of a size rectangle are 1 to the square root of 2. So proportionally speaking, this, let's see, so this is, let's see, root 2 would be, this would be the root 2 edge, and then this would be the 1 edge. Okay. Anyway, I don't want to get into that. We'll maybe talk about that again later. Let's get back to the folding, and I'm sorry for taking that little detour, but I just had to share that because I just learned that today. All right, so I've got one of those. Now I'm going to take that same corner. I'm going to rotate the paper now. So now my rays of the kite crease are going down this way, and now I'll take this corner, which is the top, which is actually the top corner of the kite, and I'm going to bring that over to the end of that other kite crease. And then unfold that. And so here we are. And next, Well, yeah, so let's just go on to the next step. Now we're going to add some creases that subdivide these two squares. There's a square here and there's a square here, okay? So I'm going to take this bottom corner of the kite and I'm going to bring it up to that intersection that we just made. And unfold. And then we're going to do the same thing with the little square. I'm going to spin it around so that I can fold up and away from myself. And these creases will actually come in handy because they essentially give us creases that help form the fish base that I mentioned that we're going to create. And actually, of course, we're making two fish bases. So one of them will be made with this part of the square, or this particular larger square, and then one will eventually be made with this little square up here. Okay. So as I mentioned before, we're going to make something that's kind of like a preliminary fold. So for this next step, notice that the marking of the line in the diagram is a dot dot dash line, which means mountain fold, and you can see that arrow swings around behind. So essentially we're making a mountain fold that travels through this intersection. It just so happens that that mountain fold will also connect with the two ends of the kite creases that we made before. Now when I make this fold, I like to just go ahead and flip the paper over. And so here's that intersection right here that we're about to fold through. So I like to flip it over and fold this up. Sometimes I'll actually even, because I mentioned the ends of those kite creases, I'll close the kite, okay? Because that way when I fold this corner up, I actually have three different references that I am looking at. And we're starting with the one in the middle, also making sure that this stays lined up with the center. And then as we start to ease in here, we can make sure that we end up with really nice creases that hit these corners on both sides. So just like I typically do, I like to kind of ease into those. And there we go. It hits all three of those reference points really nicely. Okay, so we're unfolding all the way back, still over here on the white side of the paper for this next step. We're going to do the preliminary collapse. And we've got this intersection right here. If you just kind of pop that in a little bit, and then now we can start to kind of collapse the paper down, and we'll collapse those flaps like this, and then we'll collapse this top flap like so. And it is very much like a preliminary base, also known as a square base. The big difference, of course, is just that instead of the center being in the actual center of the paper, well, maybe it's not really the center of the preliminary, what's the center of the collapse is way up here now. Okay, and that's what we are left with. Okay, let's keep going. Next, we're going to kind of finish our fish base in the smaller section here, in the smaller square, okay? So to start out, we're going to make an angle bisector, taking this this top flap, if I can get a hold of it. Jeez, there we go. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we're going to bring this edge to the center crease line to make an angle bisector, this corner right here. Okay. And the next, I'm going to unfold that. And then next, I'm going to make another angle bisector down here at the bottom, but I'm only going to travel up to the middle crease line here. And what we're doing is making creases that prepare us for a rabbit ear. And if you think about it, a fish base is really just two rabbit ears connected to one another. And so now with that crease in place, and then we do have a horizontal crease. Now we don't have it on the back layer, but that's okay, we're going to take care of that. We can now engage all three of those crease segments together all valleys, and then we can pinch. And we're going to pinch this corner right up to the corner, and we want to make sure that that crease hits the corner. We can start by kind of making sure that's standing up, and then we can set it down. And it actually really doesn't matter if this ends up or down. But we'll just go ahead and set it down. Okay. So that's one of our rabbit ears, and that's half of a fish base. So now let's do the same thing on the other half. Same thing as we did before. We're going to take that edge at the top, bring it to the middle, crease. Technically, you don't actually have to crease all the way down, but we'll just do it all the way down anyways. But we really just need it to the center crease line. But you can't really see that center crease line from this side, but I guess you can't really see it from this side either. So anyway, we'll bisect from the bottom only up to the middle, and then we will squeeze, pinch our little rabbit ear into place, and then set that flap down. And there's our second rabbit ear. And now we have a fish base in the smaller of those two squares. Okay, now we're going to come back to this later. And what we're going to do now, we're only going to take this one layer here at the top, this half of the fish base that we just created. We're just going to take that one half of the fish base, and we're going to turn it like the page of a book. Okay. I know that the arrow is kind of wide, but we're really only taking that one layer, that one half of the fish base. And now we're going to make an angle bisector from this top corner. And in a sense, now we are working on the other fish base. Because you see, we've already got this angle bisector coming up this way. We're going to end up with one coming down this way. So let's just go ahead and let's make that fold. We're going to bring that down to the center line. Crease all the way through. Okay. And then we're going to unfold that flap. What I think is really neat is that that crease ends up hitting this corner of this flap right here. Okay. It might not hit it perfectly. It doesn't always hit it perfectly for me. Okay. So if it doesn't hit perfectly for you, it's fine. Right. But if everything was lined up really nicely, it should hit that corner just right. Okay. So we've unfolded the flap, and now we can use those creases that we just created for an inside reverse fold. That's what that big puffy arrow means, is we're going to inside reverse. So what that means is that if we kind of open up the paper, we'll see we've got these two creases here and here. And right now we have a mountain crease coming from this corner down to here. So what needs to happen is that this needs to reverse into a valley fold. And then the two creases on each side, those will each become mountain folds. Well, one of them is actually already a mountain fold, so we just need to reverse this one here. Okay, so if you start on the one on the back that's already a mountain fold, it kind of makes it a little bit easier to kind of get things started. Now we can reverse the crease in the middle. And then we can reverse the crease on top. Now, those of you who are seasoned folders, you're very familiar with this kind of maneuver. But if you're not, just remember that you're not making any new creases. You're just trying to crease on the existing crease lines. I've got my two outside creases as mountains now, and maybe it's a little easier to get the two outside oriented as mountain folds, and then in the middle kind of easily becomes the valley fold again, or a valley fold as it reverses. And then we can collapse that back down, and it should look like this. Just realizing on YouTube that My logo is doubled up here. I'm going to close this. There we go. All right. Let's continue. All right, so we did our inside reverse fold. Oh, I see. I got to click back over here. Okay. Okay, now. Oh, yeah, this was already like that. Okay. And then now we're going to turn this flap like we're turning the page of a book. Like so. Okay. And this next step is really neat because all of the creases are already there hanging out waiting for us to use them. Okay. We've got a crease here underneath that goes up to this vertex and then a crease here. And they're both even already in the correct orientation. We have a mountain and a valley. And what we're doing, we're kind of doing another inside reverse fold along the existing creases. We're not making any new creases. And then we're going to kind of push in and then let that go underneath and then set it down flat. And in a way, this is kind of like half of a petal fold. Super cool. But I just love that those creases were, again, just already there hanging out waiting. And it looks like Jason's here too. Hey, Jason. Jason Schneider, one of our special guests for the online retreat. Cool. And yes, I guess it is kind of like a pajarita base. All right. Now, next step. Leaving everything as it is, we will now bring this corner to meet this corner, folding through this flap. Okay? So this corner here will come right over there. Okay. Next, we're going to once again turn a flap like the page of a book, but we do have to create a new crease through this layer. This will be a new crease, but there's already an existing crease behind it, so we can just kind of fold that over, but just fold the one layer over. Kind of flatten everything out. And by doing that, we now have this edge. That edge is going to be really helpful for this next step, because what we're going to do now is take this one single layer, and you might want to kind of anchor this flap down, because again, we're going to use this edge, and if you kind of push this layer up, we can wrap this flap around this edge, and we're going to create a swivel fold, and it's going to pivot on this vertex right here. So it will all just kind of go by itself if you just kind of flatten the paper. You just kind of push it up, just kind of flatten it down, and there it goes. Now, something on mine isn't quite lining up. It should go a little more easily. I blame the fact that I'm just teaching it. Something's probably just not lining up right. So, but most of the time, that should just kind of sit down flat. Let me see what's going on here. Well, it's good enough. All right, moving on. That's what we end up with. And now we're about to get ready to do another swivel fold. But first, I think it's helpful to do a little bit of an angle bisector here. So we're going to take this edge and we're going to bring it over to meet this edge here. So it's just a little flap, and this is going to be especially small if you're using like 6-inch paper. And don't worry too much about where it ends on this side. Sometimes it comes down to like right at that edge. Sometimes it's a little more. Sometimes it's a little less. But that's a pre-crease that we're going to use. So we unfold that step. And now we're going to do another swivel fold. So to do that, we're going to just re-engage that bisector that we just made. But then we're going to kind of push the paper in. And then what we can do now is take that extra paper, and I can actually zoom in a little bit more here. We're going to take that extra paper and we're going to mountain fold behind so that we meet this point right here. Notice that in the diagram. That mountain fold just goes right up to that corner. Everything will just kind of sit down flat. And there we go. Okay. And that's the result. And then now we can move this flap over back to where it was before. And now we need to repeat that whole sequence of steps on the other side. So I'll walk you through that because we didn't re-diagram it for the other side. But here, I'm going to turn the flap. I'm going to make an angle bisector by bringing this edge to the center line. And now, with that pre-crease, we can create an inside reverse fold. Kind of opening this up a little bit. You get this triangle. You want the outside rays of the triangle to be mountain folds. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of focus on reversing that outer kind of front slanting crease line. And then now it's easier to reverse the center crease. And that's our reverse fold. Now we're going to take this flap on the front and we're going to turn it like the page of a book. And now we can do our it's sort of an inside reverse fold. It's also sort of half of a petal fold, but we're just using those existing creases to push this layer underneath, and it'll just go nice and easy. Those creases are already there. No creases need to be made in that step. And then from here, we take this corner and we match it up to this corner, folding through this whole flap to here. Hey, Bonnie, thanks for joining us. Yes, sorry you have to go. And yes, this will stay online. As soon as the recording ends, then you will be able to watch it. Okay. All right, so now that we've folded this flap up, it is really important. We can't forget this step. We have to take this flap and then turn it. Turn one flap back to this side because that gives us our edge here. And now we can take this and kind of push that up and against that edge, swivel that flap up. That one worked out a lot nicer than my one before. Not sure what was happening on that one before. I thought I was folding pretty accurately too, but hey. All right, now we're going to make our little angle bisector by taking this edge to that edge in the middle. Okay. I've noticed when I folded these recently that, again, the end of that crease, the placement kind of varies for some reason. Okay, so that's a pre-crease, so we unfold that. Now we can lift that flap up a little bit and then re-engage that pre-crease and then just start to tuck the paper underneath so that we make a mountain fold that connects with this flap right here. And once that's done, we can take that center flap once again, and this one kind of came loose. You want to make sure that they're still sitting underneath your sort of fish base folds up here, your two rabbit ears. Now, before we move on, there is one thing that I forgot to mention before, and it's kind of a coincidence, but it kind of makes sense that this is the case, that the base that we've used to create this alligator, or start creating this alligator, is the exact same base that Julie used to design her Rhinoceros, which is the model of hers that I'm teaching at the online retreat. So, by sort of practicing the beginning of this model, you'll be able to fold that rhino with no problem at all, at least the start of it. But I love that rhino. It's a really, really solid model. I think you're going to really enjoy it. And it just goes to show that any one base can go in so many different directions. And I mean, as a matter of fact, I've seen a lot of designs that use the same kind of sort of offset preliminary base that, it's basically you're grafting different bases together. And in this case, we've grafted 2 fish bases together. One designer who comes to mind is Oriol Esteve. A lot of his models, I think, do that. So, all right. Let's continue. We've now done all of that on the other side. Everything's all evened up. And we now have 2 front legs. Okay? You can kind of start to see the alligator taking shape. Next, we're going to work on the bottom half or the back half of the alligator. Okay, so we're going to kind of form the tail and the back legs all in kind of one set of moves. Excuse me. So, let's flip the model over on the back. And we're going to create some more angle bisectors from this edge to the center line. But we only need to fold up to the middle of the model, that midline. Okay, and we're going to do it on both sides. So let's take that edge to the middle. You will get a little bit of paper creep here, probably. This is often where you start to see the paper kind of sliding over and exposing that central seam. Okay, all right. So there's one of those, and then we'll fold the other. Hey, Marta, thanks for joining us. Good to see you. Now, I've brought this up before, and I was trying to remember. It was one of the models that I taught at the online retreat last time around, but we did this exact same set of folds for, maybe it was the armadillo. The same sets of folds are used for the Tanaka mouse, and I meant to grab one, and it's funny because Talo is here in the live. Talo's the one who taught me the Tanaka mouse, one of the best mice I've ever folded. Okay, sorry, I digress. But yes, but the steps that we're about to do are the same steps you use to make the tail and back legs, essentially, of the Tanaka mouse. All right, let's take the whole bottom corner flap and fold it up along the existing crease. So we're folding in half now. And now we're going to make some angle bisectors, but they're only going to travel from the outermost corner to those creases that we just made on both sides. So if you take this down like so, line that up. Of course, you can hold it however you like, but that just creates the bisector for one corner here, and then we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Okay, so it's kind of hard to see those creases on my paper, but they are there. All right, and so now we're going to valley fold through the intersections that we just created with those angle bisectors from the 2 previous steps. And so we're going to take that top corner, we're going to flip it down, and we're just trying to find those intersections. And what's kind of nice is that the creases that are already in the paper kind of help you find those intersections. It's cool because the paper just kind of knows where to go. Okay. So another thing I'll mention too is that you want to try to make sure that this is nice and lined up with itself. Okay. Another thing I'll mention as well is that you don't actually even really have to crease all the way across either. And in fact, I'll show you how that works. I'm not going to crease all the way across. You can if you'd like. It's not the end of the world if you do. But if you like to sort of minimize the number of creases that you put in the paper, we can just go ahead and go to the next step here, which will involve 2 squash folds using all the creases that we just made. And these go nice and easy, again, because all of the creases are practically there. There's one new crease that we create right about here. But if you re-engage that bottom bisector and then let this kind of swing over, you get this nice squash fold. Okay, and then of course it's do the same thing on the other side. It just goes. I love it when the paper knows what to do. Hey Kelly, sorry. Well, I'm glad you made it, even though you showed up a little late. I'm so glad you could be here, and of course you can rewatch this later. And you were swimming, but not with the alligators. Well, that's probably a good thing. Okay, so we've done the little sort of squash folds, and you can see how this can give you any number of tails, whether it's for an alligator or a mouse or an armadillo. There's the result. And these 2 points, I'll point out, are becoming the back legs. So not only did we form the tail, but now we've got these new points here that become the back feet. Okay, let's flip the model back over. And for this step, oh yeah, look at that paper creep. For this step, we have to fold through a whole bunch of layers. So we just really gotta grab it and just fold through, okay? But let me point out a reference point, because I think it's easy to mistakenly use this corner of the edges of the paper as your reference, but actually go up a little bit higher. Notice here, right there, you're actually going up to this corner here, which is the corner of our little fish base, or the corner of that rabbit ear, okay? So your references are this corner here, but you're going to this corner here. I think it's easy to get, I've done this before. That's why I bring it up. It's because, you're using this little angle here. It's easy to think, oh yeah, well, I'll use this one up there, but no, you're gonna go up to that corner, okay? And we're mountain folding, and like I said, we're mountain folding through a bunch of layers, okay? So I like to do this in the air. I like to use 2 hands like this and kind of bend that back so I can find my landmark there, and then I can easily look for my landmark here at this corner. And this is, by the way, this is the eye. This becomes the eye. So you can think of the corner of the eye flap is what we're folding to, okay? All right, now before we do the other side, we're gonna finish this side, and the way we finish it is just by making a pleat. So let's flip the paper back over to the other side now, and now take a look at this. Here's your reference. So, and you can see it in the diagram below, that you're bringing this corner here, this sort of vertex of this V, back over so that it lands on this edge. And this doesn't have to be super duper precise, but you do have a nice landmark to use. So again, you're bringing this little vertex to this edge, and again, you're folding through a bunch of layers. But as you fold that back out, give it a good pinch, flip it over, and there are our 2 feet. Now this foot's looking a little wonky because this was kind of the weird. This one went kind of weird on me before, as you'll remember. But there you have it. So let's do the same thing on the opposite side. We're making a mountain fold from this corner to the corner of the eye, or the corner of this rabbit ear. Fold that back. And then we can flip it back over. And once again, bring this corner, this vertex, this little notch, out to meet the mountain crease edge that we just created. Just really grabbing the paper and pushing it out and giving it a good pinch. And that pretty much finishes up the body of the alligator. Wow, yeah. What a creep. Okay, so it's looking like an alligator. We've even got some alligator eyes up here. But here's the problem. We don't really have an alligator mouth, and I'd say that's a pretty important feature of an alligator. But don't worry, folks. We've got a layer for that. So there's our result. So here's what we're going to do. We're actually going to take those 2 rabbit ears that we folded a long time ago, and we're going to actually open them all the way up. Because we've got a whole bunch of layers to work with in here, and so we are going to free one of those layers. And I've got to say, lately, freeing trapped layers has become one of my sort of favorite things to do in an origami sequence. And it's because it's just very satisfying, and it's a clever way to gain access to more paper in the model that then you can do stuff with, okay? All right, so we've opened up the rabbit ears. And then check this out. We're going to take half of that flap, and we're going to do a squash fold, as indicated in the diagram. We're going to kind of open that out, flatten that down, and we're basically using existing creases at this point. Okay? And speaking of existing creases, this is just like we did before, where we've got existing creases for this step to create our petal fold. Now this time we're actually doing a full petal fold, but really all you got to do, you just got to take these corners and just kind of inside reverse them, and look at there, you create the bisector down here at the bottom, and then this fold comes underneath and then meets right here in the middle. It's like magic. Just kind of tuck that in, push it underneath, and there you have a petal fold. And it does not matter if this flap is up or down right now, but what we'll do, once that's all done, we'll swing this layer back like we're turning the page of the book, so we can now repeat all that same stuff on the other half. Oh, here we go, sorry. We're going to repeat all that on the other half. So once again, we squash fold. All those creases are there. We just kind of inside reverse along the existing creases. We're making a bisector down below. And then just kind of tucking that underneath, doing the same on the other side. The paper just knows what to do. Okay. And then let's not forget to then take that corner flap here and swing it back over so that we're all nice and balanced once again. And we're nearing the finish line, because now, check this out, we can take this bottom point and swing it all the way, well, the point of this flap, and we're going to bring that all the way up to the top. And look, now we've got the makings of an alligator mouth, and then we've got some eyes. But there's still a few more little finishing moves that we're going to do that are important, particularly for the final shaping of the model. Okay, so first off, we can send these little corner flaps up. These are going to become the eyes. Okay, but we'll come back to that in just a second. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to flip this over underneath. And let me show you what we're about to do. So right now, you'll notice that all of these layers that form the bottom jaw of the alligator, they do tend to want to kind of open up, okay? And a way Julie figured out to kind of counter that is if you take the bottom jaw and you just fold it down, you just make a valley crease here, you just kind of fold it down along its natural hinge, okay? Give it a good fold. That's going to kind of help compress the layers and make them all kind of stay together, so they're not going to open up as much, okay? So once you do that, then you can kind of, swing that back forward again, and there you go. Now you got a nice alligator mouth, okay? And now we can do some soft squash folds for the eyes, and you don't actually need to flatten the eyes when you do this. You could, I suppose, but you're basically just you're opening it up a little from the inside, just giving it a little soft kind of squish, and that gives you an eye on one side. And let's do the eye on the other side. Soft squish. Okay. So now we got the eyes. And finally, we can do a little bit with the tips of these two flaps. Now, I guess you could, but you could leave it as is. And I guess maybe it's a little more crocodilian if you leave it that way, because crocodiles do have a sort of a pointier snout. Although I would argue this still looks very alligator-like because it's still pretty wide back here. And, it's abstraction anyway. So, it has pointy feet as well. So here's what we're going to do. We can, this is also just a nice little feature, is that we can give it a little nose, because of course, the alligators have, and crocodiles for that matter, have like nostrils that stick up. So you can do this with one little valley fold. I kind of like to use two, okay? But you want to make them really tiny. At least the first one you want to make really tiny. So I'm going to do one, and then I'm going to do the second one. The reason why I like to do two is because then it sort of blunts the edge a little bit here at the top. But it's just a little flap, but it gives a nice sort of appearance of the nostrils, right? And then for the bottom corner, we can do the same thing, but the bottom corner looks a little bit more like teeth, right? So just take a little corner and just kind of fold it up a little bit. And that's just a nice little detail. And there you have it. Here's your finished alligator. And I gotta say, I can't think of too many other alligators out there in the origami world. That was one reason I was really excited to learn this when Julie first sort of revealed it to the world. The one alligator that does come to mind, though, is Michael LaFosse's alligator. And his, of course, has scales. It's very realistic looking. My friend Charles owns one of the LaFosse alligators that Michael LaFosse made. And it's about maybe 2.5 feet, maybe like 2.5 feet long. But apparently the piece of paper that he started with was a 6 foot by 6 foot square. 6 foot square. I kid you not. All of the pleating is necessary for all of the scales. So, and that's a really hefty model. So there you go. There you have it. There's the alligator. And again, the same base for this alligator is used for the rhinoceros. And you can maybe kind of start to see how they are related, particularly if you look at the nose and the horns of the rhinoceros. Is that, we had all of these extra flaps here in the front of the alligator that were really sort of handy and there for us to use for the horns here in this rhino. And then the ears, they might come from the eye flaps. We shall see. But anyway, this is a really great model. I hope you can join us for the online retreat at the end of September, last weekend of September. But before then, of course, next week, I will be teaching Jason Schneider's amazing box turtle. This is such a cool model. It's super cute. It's such a funny, idea. A turtle that's from a box. It's a box turtle. And this was another class that I took at Origami USA, the convention in New York City. Also, Jason published these diagrams in the recent issue of The Fold, which you can get by subscribing to Origami USA. And speaking of diagrams, so if you're watching this live, they are not posted yet, but I am going to post the diagrams because Julie was so very gracious to share these with us. I'm going to post the diagrams for the alligator on the free live stream page on the Autumn Retreat page. But I have that linked in the description below. So if you click on that link during the live right now, it's not going to be there. But as soon as I sign off, I'm going to upload the diagrams. Okay. So Everyone, thank you so much again. Julie, thank you so much for being a part of this event, and it's been really fun working with you on your designs, and it's really fun to teach them. Once again, next week we've got Jason's Box Turtle. Same time. We're just gonna just stick with the Friday time slot, 4 p.m. Eastern time, and then following week we will do the Square Twist Tessellation in preparation for William Hartman's amazing, cute little toad that I'll be teaching at the retreat. And so, with that being said, I will see you later, alligators. After a while, crocodiles. And I think I forgot to add my final slide here. So I'm just going to use this slide. Well, no, I'm not. Oh well. Here, maybe I could add it really quick. Who cares? All right, cool. So here we go. I'm just going to add this. Hopefully this works. All right, guys. Thanks again. Hope to see you at the online retreat. And I also hope to see you at the next live stream next week. Yeah, Trisha, we're croc stars over here. See you later, Joanne. See you, Jason. See you later, Brent. Bye, Steve. Bye, Kelly. Rebecca. Patsy. Marta. Thanks for being here. Okay, see you next time.